So what if the exact survival instinct that has, kept you alive your entire life is actually the very thing destroying your greatest talents?
Right, it's a terrifying thought.
It really is. I mean, just think about it. From the moment we are born, biology and society, they basically train us to accumulate and protect.
Yeah, absolutely.
You gather food so you don't starve. You gather money so you aren't vulnerable.
Yeah.
You gather knowledge so you can, outcompete the person sitting next to you for a promotion.
It's all about building that safety net.
Exactly. We are deeply inherently wired to hoard our resources. But today, we are jumping into a deep dive on a text that argues that everything modern psychology tells you about protecting your energy and building your empire, it might actually be the exact mechanism causing you to feel completely empty.
It's a massive pivot from what we're usually taught.
It really is. We're unpacking this short but incredibly dense audio reflection today, and it's based on a biblical passage, Matthew 5.13:16. Specifically, it zeroes in on the phrase, "You are the light of the world."
Right.
And I want to be super clear right off the bat. We aren't doing a dry academic theological study here.
No, definitely not.
This source material, it operates as a pretty brutal, practical blueprint for how you use your talents, how you justify your place in society, and, honestly, how you treat the people standing right in front of you.
Yeah, the premise of this reflection fundamentally attacks what we could call the modern cult of self-optimization.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Because we live in this era where every skill, every hobby, and every spare moment of free time is supposed to be monetized.
Right, you have to build a personal brand out of everything.
Exactly. But this text introduces what we could call the spiritual physics of light.
Spiritual physics.
Yeah, it demands a complete inversion of our scarcity mindset. It presents this wild paradox that love, talent, and energy actually multiply when they are exhausted on behalf of others, rather than when they are, conserved in some kind of emotional savings account.
Wow.
And perhaps most importantly, for anyone listening right now who feels like their life is just fundamentally broken, the source makes this profound argument for why the most flawed, disastrous lives can sometimes generate the most intense illumination.
Okay, to really ground this, let's look at the actual physics of light. Because I think the physical mechanics here are totally crucial to understanding the spiritual argument the source is making.
They really are.
So think about a lighthouse. Not just the cute idea of one, but the actual architectural reality of a 19th century lighthouse perched on the edge of this jagged, dangerous coastline.
Right, a serious piece of infrastructure.
Exactly. The entire structure exists to house a massive Fresnel lens. It's this incredibly complex, multi-tiered glass apparatus, and the geometry of that lens is specifically designed to capture every single photon from the light source and just bend it, concentrate it, and aggressively project it miles out into a dark, churning ocean.
The whole point is the outward projection.
Right. The entire point of the architecture is external orientation. Now imagine a lighthouse keeper who gets tired of the cold.
Okay.
He decides he wants to read a novel in comfort. So he builds a series of mirrors to trap that blinding millions of candle power beam, bending it backward, focusing it entirely into the center of the room, just so he can have a well-lit reading nook.
I mean, the heat of that trapped light would probably burn the whole tower to the ground.
Exactly.
You are taking an infrastructure built for massive outward projection and forcing it into this enclosed, self-serving loop.
Yeah, it's destructive.
And in doing so, you don't just fail the ships out in the harbor, right? You actively destroy the environment you are trying to make comfortable for yourself.
Which is such a perfect metaphor for what we do with our own talents.
It is. And the source material makes this exact pivot immediately. It strips away all the poetic romance we usually associate with the word light, and it just presents a rigid operational law.
Right, what does it actually say?
The text states, "If you have received light, that light is not to be kept. That light is to reach others."
So it's a mandate.
Yes, it is a mandate of transmission. And to illustrate what perfect transmission looks like, the reflection points to a highly specific historical and spiritual paradigm, which is the Virgin Mary.
Which I have to be honestly is where I initially balked a little bit when reading the source.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, when you bring up the Virgin Mary, people immediately think of this unachievable, pristine perfection. Like statues in cathedrals.
Untouchable.
Exactly. But the text isn't focusing on her as a marble statue, is it? It's focusing on her mechanics as a conduit.
That's the key. The text notes that everything she receives from God is directed entirely toward two specific outcomes: God's glory and the good of mankind.
There's no middleman taking a cut.
Exactly. There is absolutely zero retention for the sake of her own ego or comfort. In psychological terms, you could say this is about the total absence of friction.
Friction. Expand on that a bit.
Well, friction occurs when energy meets resistance, right? So if you think of your ego, your need to be recognized, your need to feel important, your need to hoard credit. If you think of all that as a form of spiritual resistance, then Mary is presented as a frictionless medium.
Oh, wow. I love that. A frictionless medium.
Yeah, she doesn't absorb the light to make herself appear luminous. She just allows the light to pass through her completely unobstructed. The text establishes this foundational axiom here, which is light does not illuminate itself. Light always illuminates those around it.
Okay, I hear that, but let's just be brutally honest for a second.
Let's do it.
Isn't being a perpetual mirror just incredibly exhausting?
It sounds like it would be.
I mean, if you spend your whole day at work managing crises, and then you come home and you feel like you have to be this patient, glowing conduit of light for your family, and then you have to be the supportive friend on top of that, when do you get to just sit in the light?
Right, when is it your turn?
Yeah, because we are living through an epidemic of burnout and compassion fatigue right now. The whole gig economy and hyperconnectivity, they demand that we are just on all the time.
You're expected to be available 200/7.
Exactly. So if every single gift you have is meant solely for the good of mankind, as the text says, you are going to be completely depleted by, like, Tuesday afternoon.
Oh, for sure.
I don't feel like a frictionless medium when I give all day. I feel like a totally drained battery.
And that makes total sense. But you feel like a drained battery because you are still operating under the assumption that you are the power source.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the critical distinction the source is making. Burnout, or compassion fatigue, as you accurately labeled it, it often stems from the delusion that we have to manufacture the energy we're giving away.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because if I believe that my empathy, my patience, my intellect, if I think those are finite resources that I personally generate inside myself, then yes, giving them away will mathematically bankrupt me.
I'll just hit zero.
Exactly. But the source's use of Mary as the paradigm answers this specific fear of exhaustion. The joy, the sustenance, it isn't found in hoarding the light. It is found in the actual sensation of the transmission.
So the act of giving doesn't deplete the conduit at all.
Think about a copper wire carrying a high voltage electrical current. The copper isn't depleted by the electricity moving through it.
Right, it just carries it.
Exactly. In fact, the passage of the current is what gives the wire its warmth, its magnetic field, its actualized purpose.
Wow. Yeah.
Friction, the burning out, that only happens when the wire is damaged, or when we try to cap the end of the wire and store the electricity inside it.
Which goes back to the lighthouse keeper trapping the light in his room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When you act as a true conduit, the light passes through you, and you get to experience the profound warmth and illumination of that light precisely because it is passing through your system. You are sustained by the flow, not by the accumulation.
I mean, that drastically shifts the paradigm. The exhaustion I feel isn't from giving too much. It's from the heavy, invisible effort of trying to generate the light myself.
Yes. Or trying to manage exactly how and where the light is perceived by others so you get the credit.
Right, the ego management. But let's bring this down from the grand historical scale to the reality of the person listening right now.
Sure, let's make it practical.
Because the text actually anticipates this shift. It asks a direct question. How are we light? And the answer it gives is surprisingly mundane.
It really is.
It doesn't talk about martyrdom or a global philanthropy or anything huge like that. It says we are light through the specific, concrete faculties, qualities, and knowledge that God gives us.
And the author of the reflection makes a brilliant rhetorical choice right here. To explain divine illumination, they choose examples that are aggressively, almost stubbornly ordinary.
Yeah, what were the examples again?
The text explicitly points to 3 specific capabilities: being a good sewer, being a good singer, or being a good mathematician.
It's just taking the concept completely out of the monastery and dropping it right onto a desk or a workbench.
That's exactly what it's doing. It democratizes the concept of a divine gift. Look at the juxtaposition of those 3 skills. Sewing is tactile, it's manual, often solitary, and deeply domestic.
Right, it's very grounded.
It is the act of binding things together to create warmth or protection. And then mathematics is the absolute pinnacle of intellectual abstraction, right? It is the language of logic and invisible structures.
Completely different sphere.
And then singing is performative, it's artistic, visceral, and totally public. By selecting these wildly divergent human capacities, the source just dismantles the idea that being the light of the world requires a specific personality type or a religious vocation.
You don't have to be a priest or a monk.
No. Your craft, whatever you are naturally wired to do well, is the exact lens through which the light is meant to be refracted.
But the text instantly attaches a massive, non-negotiable caveat to these ordinary skills.
It does. It doesn't let us off the hook.
Right, it says, let's not make a mistake. These qualities are never to enrich ourselves. And then it doubles down on the phrasing. It says they are always, always, always thinking of others, by and for others.
That repetition is intense.
That always, always, always really caught me. It leaves absolutely no room for the modern concept of doing it for me.
Zero room.
It reminds me of the ultimate tragedy of unshared talent. Like, imagine a chef who possesses a once-in-a-generation palate. This person understands the exact thermodynamic tipping point of a searing steak.
Oh, I can picture this.
They know the perfect acidic balance of a reduction sauce, the precise structural integrity of a pastry. They have it all. And they spend an entire weekend sourcing the finest ingredients and laboring in the kitchen for 20 hours to produce this mind-bending Michelin star masterpiece.
A total work of art.
Yes. And then they carry the plates into a windowless, locked room, sit down in total silence, eat the entire feast completely alone, wash the dishes, and go to sleep.
I mean, that is just culinary solipsism.
It's so depressing.
It is. Because the skill is executed perfectly, the objective quality of the food is undeniable, but the entire endeavor feels profoundly hollow.
Because the mastery is void of purpose. Food, especially food elevated to that level of artistry, it is inherently a mechanism for connection.
Right, it's a shared experience.
It is meant to delight someone else, to spark conversation, to nourish a community. Utilizing that level of genius solely to stimulate your own taste buds in a dark room is the exact equivalent of turning the lighthouse beam inward. You are just consuming your own light.
And if we apply that warning, that our qualities are never to enrich ourselves, to our current culture, it forces a really radical reevaluation of how we measure a successful life.
How so?
We'll take the text's example of the mathematician. In a modern, hyper-capitalist structure, what is the ultimate trajectory of a successful mathematical genius?
Oh, they go to Wall Street.
Exactly. Often, it means taking those rare analytical skills, moving into high-frequency trading, and developing an algorithmic model that exploits micro-fluctuations in the market.
Just to generate massive wealth for yourself and a few shareholders.
Right. The culturally accepted metric for the mathematician's success is purely financial accumulation and status.
You optimize the algorithm, you get the penthouse, you retire at 40, you beat the system.
But according to the ruthless logic of our source material, if that mathematical genius is locked in a closed loop of self-enrichment, it is a hidden light.
Wow.
It is mathematically brilliant, sure, but it's spiritually useless. It fails the fundamental test of its own existence because it does not illuminate the path for anyone else.
That is a tough pill to swallow for modern society.
Very tough. But conversely, think about a mathematician who uses those exact same cognitive faculties to optimize logistical supply chains for disaster relief.
Or figuring out the structural integrity for affordable housing.
Exactly. Or simply sitting down and patiently teaching a struggling high school student how to finally grasp algebra. That person is functioning as a luminous body.
The inherent skill is identical in both scenarios.
Yes, the math doesn't change. What changes is the vector. The vector must point outward.
So, I mean, look at your own life right now as you're listening to this. Look at your job, your hobbies, the things your friends say you are naturally good at.
Take an inventory.
Yeah. Are you an incredible software coder? Are you a meticulous organizer? Are you simply the person in your friend group who actually knows how to listen without interrupting?
Which is a huge skill, by the way.
It really is.
Yeah.
The source is demanding that you ask yourself, where is the vector of this skill pointing? Are you using it to build a more comfortable, secure darkroom for yourself? Or is it actually lighting up the environment for someone else?
That's the ultimate test.
But if we commit to this, if we point the vector outward, always, 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 we run straight back into that anxiety of depletion we talked about earlier.
Right, the math of it.
Because logically, if I constantly give away my money, my bank account zeroes out. If I constantly give away my time, I don't have time to sleep. How does the text resolve the math of constant giving?
It resolves it by introducing what we can term spiritual economics. And this is where the text completely departs from the zero-sum reality of material physics.
Okay, lay it out for me.
The source explicitly states, When light illuminates, it does not diminish by illuminating more objects.
Let's break down the mechanics of that phrase. When light illuminates, it does not diminish by illuminating more objects.
It's a really visual concept.
It is. If you were standing in a pitch-black basement and you turn on a heavy-duty flashlight, and there's a single chair in the room, the beam hits the chair. The chair is illuminated.
Right.
Now, if someone carries 5 more chairs into that basement and sets them down within the beam, the flashlight doesn't suddenly struggle.
The battery doesn't drain 6 times faster.
Exactly. The beam doesn't get dimmer. The capacity of the light simply expands to reveal the reality of the room.
The source takes this observable principle of photons and just applies it directly to human virtues. It makes this astonishing claim that when you love, your capacity to love doesn't run out just because you distribute it among more people.
Love is not a pie chart.
Exactly. Love is not a pie chart where giving a slice to your neighbor means you have less for your spouse or your children. The text argues that the act of distribution is actually the mechanism of growth.
Growth through giving.
It says, the more you let yourself be loved by God, that is, illuminated by Him, and that light reaches others, that light increases. It is literally an economy of infinite abundance.
And the source provides very specific practical dynamics for how this growth occurs. It says, faith grows when transmitted. Love increases when given within you, so you can give more love. And hope grows when you teach and accompany the hope of others.
That last one is so powerful.
I really want to zero in on that last one because it feels incredibly relevant right now. Hope grows when you accompany the hope of others. When you're going through a period of deep depression or hopelessness, every psychological instinct screams at you to isolate.
You just want to hide.
You want to pull the covers over your head, cancel all your plans, and conserve whatever microscopic fraction of energy you have left. You feel like you have absolutely no hope to spare.
Which is a completely understandable biological human reaction to pain.
Of course.
But the text suggests that this instinct to isolate is exactly what starves the remaining hope. The cure for a deficit of hope isn't to retreat and try to manufacture it in a vacuum.
Because you can't.
Right. The cure is to find someone else who is trapped in the dark, someone else who is struggling, and just sit with them in their waiting.
Wow.
By acting as the conduit for their hope, by simply holding the space for them to believe things might get better, your own internal reservoir of hope actually begins to expand.
It's like working out a muscle.
Exactly. The act of accompanying someone else's fragile hope exercises your own spiritual muscles. It is a brilliant, totally counterintuitive psychological insight, and it's masked as this simple theological directive.
But the author of this reflection isn't just handing out warm, fuzzy platitudes about growth either. There is a terrifying flip side to this equation.
Yes, a literal ultimatum.
The text warns that the gifts we receive, the talents we decide not to hand over to others, they spoil and are lost.
That specific verb choice, spoil, it is so visceral.
It's gross, honestly.
It is. It implies organic decay. It completely shatters the illusion that we can just put our talents in a safe deposit box and, preserve them for later. It means that hoarded capabilities don't just sit dormant, they undergo a process of rotting.
It's the difference between a rushing mountain stream and a stagnant pond.
Perfect analogy.
If water is constantly flowing, hitting the rocks, moving outward, it stays perfectly crisp and drinkable. But if you dam that river up, if you create an inlet with no outlet, the water doesn't just sit there in suspended animation.
It changes.
The lack of movement changes the actual chemistry of the water. It becomes stagnant, it breeds mosquitoes, it gets choked with algae, it becomes toxic. The life inside, it literally suffocates.
That is precisely the danger the text is warning against. This is a strict, use it or lose it spiritual law. Give me an example of how that looks in real life. Okay, let's say you have a profound natural gift for empathy. You can read a room, you intuitively understand people's pain, and you know exactly how to comfort them.
A great gift.
But eventually you decide that carrying other people's pain is too heavy. You decide to set up strict boundaries, to shut down your emotional receptors, and to just never engage deeply with anyone's struggles again in order to protect your own peace.
Which, again, modern psychology often tells us to do.
Right. You think you are preserving your empathy in a glass case. But the text argues that by cutting off the outward transmission, you actually lose the capacity to feel it altogether.
The empathy spoils.
Yes, your heart calcifies. The defense mechanism literally becomes a prison.
So just to make this crystal clear, because this is a huge claim, Is the source arguing that it is literally mechanically impossible to be spiritually selfish and spiritually healthy at the same time?
Yes, it is an absolute structural impossibility within this framework.
Man.
You cannot hoard the light and remain healthy because the very act of hoarding turns the light into rot. What the text is handing you is a literal instruction manual for human expansion, but the instructions are written upside down.
Right, it's totally inverted.
Do you want to grow in love? The instruction is spend every single ounce of it. Do you want to grow in faith? Give it away to someone who doubts. Do you want to grow in hope? Walk into the dark with someone else. You have to continually empty your pockets to expand their capacity.
Okay, I am fully on board with this economy of abundance. The idea that giving expands our capacity is beautiful. But, and this is a big one, if we actually start doing this, we run into a massive psychological hazard.
The ego hazard.
Yes, if I start pouring my energy out and I realize that my skills, my coding, my listening, my cooking are actually bringing profound light to people's lives, how do I not become insufferably arrogant?
It's so hard not to.
How do you prevent yourself from standing in the center of the room, looking at everyone who is benefiting from your talent and saying, look at how incredibly luminous I am. Look at all the warmth I am generating for you people.
Right, because human beings are biologically addicted to taking credit.
We want the applause. We really do.
We crave the validation. The ego is incredibly dangerously adept at co-opting spiritual truths for its own glorification.
Oh, 100%.
You can start off with the purest intentions of serving others, and within 6 months, you are keeping a subconscious ledger of everyone who owes you gratitude.
Keeping score.
Exactly. But the author of this reflection knows exactly how the ego operates, and they shut down that trap unequivocally. The text states with absolute finality, we do not shine with our own light at all.
We do not shine with our own light at all.
It reminds you that your vocation to be a light in the world is emphatically not because you are morally superior or more intelligent or more inherently valuable than anyone else.
That requires a massive, almost painful ego death.
It is the ultimate humbling mechanism of this entire philosophy. We shine exclusively with the light of God. Every merit, every intellectual capacity, every ounce of artistic talent you possess is categorized by the text as something received.
Received, not generated.
Right. The author references a meditation from yesterday regarding the Beatitudes, specifically zeroing in on the phrase, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." They directly link this concept of spiritual poverty to the realization that we generate nothing on our own. We receive everything.
Poor in spirit. That is one of those phrases that just gets so distorted, I think.
Oh, completely.
People often hear it and think it means you are supposed to walk around with crippling low self-esteem, constantly degrading yourself and acting like you are worthless.
Like a doormat.
Right. But in the context of this physics of light we are discussing, it means something entirely different. It means recognizing your profound spiritual bankruptcy.
Yes.
You don't own the capital, you just manage the distribution. It completely reminds me of the mechanics of stained glass windows.
Oh, I love this. That is a phenomenal visual framework for this. Break down the mechanics of the glass for us.
Okay, so think about standing inside an ancient, massive cathedral at like 2 in the morning. You look up at these gigantic, elaborate stained glass windows. What do you actually see?
Nothing. It's dark.
Right, you see an expanse of pitch black, opaque shapes. It is just dull lead and cold glass. The window itself, no matter how brilliantly the master artisan cut the shapes, no matter how much pigment was fired into the silica, it generates absolutely zero light.
It is dead in the dark.
Exactly. But if you scan in that exact same spot at 7 in the morning as the sun crests the horizon and those photons hit the exterior of the glass, suddenly the entire interior of the cathedral is drenched in ruby reds, sapphire blues, and emerald greens.
It comes alive.
It becomes a transcendent masterpiece. The window didn't suddenly learn how to manufacture a power source overnight. It simply allowed a massive external light source to pass through it. And by passing through, the window gave that light a specific, localized color and shape.
That analogy perfectly maps onto the source's argument about human capability.
Right.
Your specific gift for mathematics, your specific tone of voice when you sing, your specific way of calming down a panicked friend, that is the precise color and cut of your glass.
It's your unique design.
It is uniquely yours and it is beautiful. But the raw energy that allows that talent to actually illuminate a room, the grace that allows your words to actually penetrate and heal another person's mind, that is the sun.
That is the received light.
Yes, the lead lines between the glass represent your boundaries, your limitations, the exact shape of your humanity. If we connect this back to being poor in spirit, it completely neutralizes the ego.
How so?
Because you can be incredibly proud of the specific colors of your glass while simultaneously remaining totally aware that without the external light, you are just a dark wall.
And think about how incredibly liberating that realization is.
It's a huge relief.
It really is. We live in a society that places an unbearable amount of psychological pressure on the individual. You are told you have to be a self-made person. You have to generate your own momentum, manifest your own destiny, and be the constant burning source of your own success.
It's exhausting, and it leads to massive anxiety.
But if you accept the physics of this text, if you accept that you do not have to be the nuclear reactor, you just have to be the glass, the pressure is entirely lifted.
You don't have to invent the sun.
Thank goodness.
You don't have to carry the weight of being the savior of your workplace or your family. You just have to keep your glass clean.
Just keep it clean.
You just have to ensure that your ego, your resentments, and your need for control aren't acting as thick coats of paint blocking the light from getting through. The freedom found in acknowledging your own inability to generate light is profound.
It allows you to participate without the panic.
Exactly. It allows you to participate in the illumination of the world without the crushing terror of having to sustain the energy grid yourself.
Keep the glass clean.
Yeah.
I love that but. And this is a massive but for me, and I guarantee it is for you listening right now.
What is it?
What happens when the glass isn't just smudged with a little bit of ego? What happens when the glass is shattered? What happens when you look at the trajectory of your life, your past decisions, your failed relationships, and you don't see a beautiful, intact cathedral window? You just see a pile of sharp, broken, fragmented shards on the floor.
Because life is brutal.
It is. We make catastrophic mistakes. We betray people's trust. We fail ourselves. How does this beautiful theory of light account for profound human failure?
This is where the source text proves it isn't just abstract theology, it is profoundly, deeply compassionate toward the human condition.
It doesn't shy away from the mess.
No, the author does not pretend that being a conduit is a clean, seamless process. The text openly, bluntly acknowledges that doing this day to day is grueling.
It's hard work.
It states that we will all encounter heavy bumps in the road, we will fall into periods of doubt confusion, and we will experience sheer exhaustion.
The author even voices the exact, paralyzing internal monologue of doubt that so many of us struggle with. The text quotes the listener's own inner critic. But what light am I? My life is a disaster if I am full of defects.
My life is a disaster. I want you to think about how relatable that phrase is.
It's almost too relatable.
How many nights do you close your bedroom door, drop the facade you've been maintaining all day, and feel like, fundamentally, your life is a disaster?
Most people feel that way at some point.
You look at your impatience, your anxieties, your addictions, your failures, and you think, I am the furthest thing from a light to the world. I am a liability.
And what is the text response to that specific crushing shame?
It replies with 2 words. No importa. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That is staggering. It feels almost irresponsible to say that your defects don't matter.
It feels irresponsible because we are used to merit-based systems where your value is tied strictly to your flawless performance.
Right, if you mess up, you're out.
But the text is introducing radical grace. It explicitly argues that even the most defective people, the people with the most glaring public flaws and the heaviest baggage, are still capable of being immense sources of light if they engage in a few specific actions.
And what are those actions?
It requires perseverance, it requires the humility to ask for forgiveness, it requires the willingness to start over again and again, and crucially, it requires the hard work of reconciling with the people you have actively hurt.
Okay, I want to look at the mechanics of that kind of repair.
Right.
Because the text is arguing that the act of apologizing is not just a social nicety, right? It is in itself an emanation of light.
It generates light.
The act of looking someone in the eye and saying, I messed up, my actions were selfish, I broke your trust, and I am asking for your forgiveness, that actually generates illumination in a dark world. It reminds me entirely of the philosophy of kintsugi.
Oh, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery. Yes, that is the perfect structural analogy for this kind of grace. Explain how the repair actually works.
So, when a ceramic bowl is dropped and shatters into pieces, the Western instinct is to try and hide the damage.
Throw it away or glue it secretly.
Right. We want to find a perfectly clear, invisible adhesive, glue the pieces back together, and turn the bowl around on the shelf so no one sees the crack. We want to pretend the disaster never happened.
Conceal the flaws.
But in kintsugi, The artisan takes the broken shards and rejoins them using a special tree sap lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum.
They highlight the break.
Exactly. The entire philosophy is that the breakage and the repair are not shameful events to be disguised. They are a vital, beautiful part of the object's history. The repair takes months. It is painstaking work.
It's not a quick fix.
Not at all. But when it is finished, the repaired bowl is visually stunning. The gold actually illuminates the fractures. The bowl is considered more valuable and more beautiful precisely because it has been broken and meticulously healed.
And that is exactly how the Source views the disaster of a human life. A theoretically perfect life. A life that has never made a major mistake, never had to swallow its pride, never had to beg for forgiveness, can sometimes be incredibly rigid and opaque.
It can lack empathy.
Exactly. It lacks empathy because it has never known the floor. But a life that admits it is a disaster. A life that has been shattered by bad choices, but has done the painstaking, kintsugi-like work of repairing those fractures through apologies, restitution, and starting over.
That life catches the light.
Yes, that life catches the divine light in a completely unique, brilliant way. The thick gold lines of forgiveness become the very places where the light shines out the brightest. The cracks are the conduits.
But the author takes this concept of brokenness and pushes it one step further into a statement that genuinely challenged me.
What was it?
The text concludes by saying, sometimes the greatest light comes from the smallest, seemingly least important people, whose smallness provides an immense light that does not end.
It's a powerful thought.
Now, I have to be honest. When I hear that, a cynical part of me thinks, isn't that just a comforting lie we tell people who aren't famous, rich, or powerful to make them feel better about being unimportant?
Sure, it can sound like a platitude.
Right. Is it really true, structurally, that the small, unimportant people give the most light?
It is not a comforting lie. It is a structural necessity within the physics of light we have been discussing.
Break that down for me.
Think back to our discussion about the ego acting as friction. What are grandiosity, power, fame, and the obsession with being perceived as important?
They're all ego.
They are massive constructions of ego. And what does the ego do? It hoards the light. It claims the light for itself.
Ah, I see where you're going.
When you are deeply invested in your own importance, you spend an enormous amount of energy building a thick, opaque wall around yourself to protect your status, your wealth, and your image.
You're putting up shields.
Therefore, the more important a person believes they are, the thicker the glass becomes and the less transparent they are to the light.
Wow. The lead gets too thick, and the glass gets painted over with their own PR.
Precisely. The heavy burden of importance blocks the transmission. But a person who embraces their smallness, a person who accepts their defects, who knows they are deeply flawed, and who isn't wasting an ounce of energy trying to build a monument to their own ego.
Their glass is thin.
Their glass is incredibly thin. Their glass is radically transparent because they have no grand image to protect and no status to hoard. The light can pass right through them with zero friction and zero resistance.
That makes so much sense structurally.
That is why the Source can confidently, logically state that their smallness provides an immense light that does not end. The complete lack of ego removes all barriers to the divine light. Their poverty of spirit makes them the ultimate conductor.
So, the very fact that you feel unimportant right now, the very fact that you sit there and recognize your life is a bit of a disaster, that you aren't the CEO, that you aren't the influencer, that lack of importance is the exact prerequisite for being the most powerful kind of light.
It's the ultimate qualification.
Because you know with absolute certainty that you aren't the sun. You are just overwhelmingly grateful to be a piece of the glass.
Exactly. Your disaster, when offered up without ego and repaired through the daily grind of forgiveness, becomes the most brilliant lens possible.
This has been a massive, paradigm-shifting deep dive today. We have covered a profound amount of psychological and spiritual ground.
We really have.
Let's try to pull these threads together. We started by looking at the architecture of the lighthouse, realizing the absolute absurdity of turning our gifts inward to keep ourselves warm while the ships crash in the dark.
Right.
We realized that whether your specific ordinary gift is advanced supply chain mathematics, singing a song, or just being a patient listener, it was given to you specifically so that you could hand it away to someone else.
And we explored the terrifying but beautiful paradox of spiritual economics.
The abundance mindset.
Yes, the reality that essential resources like love, faith, and hope actually multiply and expand when you spend them on others, and that hoarding those exact same resources to protect yourself causes them to stagnate, spoil, and rot inside you.
We recognize the profound, exhausting burden of trying to be our own power source, and the immense relief of knowing we are merely the stained glass. We just have to keep the glass clean and let the external light pass through.
Which is such a relief.
And finally, we learned that perfection is an illusion that gets in the way of illumination. The broken, disastrous pieces of our lives, when painstakingly mended with the gold of forgiveness and perseverance, often transmit the brightest light of all.
It completely detonates how we view our own value.
It really does. It is not about being the biggest, most important star in the sky. It is simply about refusing to hoard whatever light hits your particular cracked piece of glass.
It is a radical, demanding call to scrutinize the motives behind everything we do.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the final, lingering question, drawn directly from the closing lines of our source material.
The homework for the listener.
Exactly. I want you to carry this specific metric with you as you go to work, as you talk to your family, and as you look at your own ambitions this week. Ask yourself this. Take a look at your day today. Is your life truly thought out by and for others?
What an incredibly heavy, beautiful question to leave hanging in the air.
It's something to chew on for sure.
Thank you so much for sitting with us, for wrestling with these concepts, and for joining us on this deep dive. Think about the lighthouse, Think about exactly where your beam is pointing today. We'll catch you next time.